See, when you know your why, if what you choose to do with your life is in line with your why, you will have passion for what you do. And passion is the fuel that gives you the energy to pursue your dreams. With passion, you stick to it. Without passion, you give up.
Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I'm Verit Kogan, and I'm thrilled to have Dr. Gary Sanchez here with us today. Gary is an international speaker, author, dentist, inventor, and founder and CEO of the WHY Institute. He is best known as Dr. Why for discovering the 9 whys and creating the world's first why discovery tool. It's an online assessment that helps people accurately and quickly discover their why in under 5 minutes. He is the author of the book, The Power of the 9 Whys, How People and Teams Get Clear, Stand Out, and Play Bigger. And he is now on a mission to help 1 billion people unleash their true self by discovering their why operating system, what he calls WHY.os. So Gary, it is such a delight to have you here today and to have this important conversation, because there's so many people out there that truly don't know their why. And they're seeking like meaning and greater fulfillment. So really just, excited to be able to dive into this today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, for sure, Vera. I'm excited about this. It's going to be fun. Let's jump in, right?
Let's jump in with a why question, since why is the topic of the day. So why is it important for people to discover their why?
Forever people have been asking the question, why do I do what I do? Like, why am I here? What should I be doing with my life? And those are very challenging questions. But when you know that, when you have an answer to that question, that's when things fall into place for you. That's when you have unlimited energy for it. That's when you love what you're doing. Simon Sinek had that TED Talk that everybody watched about 14 years ago, 15 years ago, and over 100 million people have seen that now, Verit, 100 million people. So that many in the last 15 years have been asking that same question. What is my why? Simon Sinek says you should start everything with why, right? When you know your why, what you do has more impact, more meaning, more focus, more direction. Tony Robbins says that, when you know your why, you'll know how to live. So it gives you the way to live your life. And Tony Robbins has a pretty massive reach in himself. Michael Hyatt says, when you know your why, you'll know your way. And gives you the way, the path for your life. And then, we can go even further back. Friedrich Nietzsche says, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. So knowing your why gives you the grit to hang in there when times are tough. And then we could even go to Mark Twain, right? Mark Twain says the 2 most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. So it's one of the 2 most important days in your life, Verit, is finding your why. And many people go through their entire life not knowing their why. And I was one of them. And maybe there was a time in your life where you were one of them as well. But for sure, I just lived my life by default, right? What feels right, that's where I go. What will make me some money, what will allow me to do, whatever it is. Many of us live our life on that path because we don't know. Because I was actually a dentist of all things. I mean, what does a dentist know about this? I became a dentist, like we were talking about, by default. It wasn't something that was my lifelong dream. Think back to when you were 15, 17 years old, your parents ask you, what do you want to do with your life? Or maybe your parents' friends come over to your house and say, so, Verit, what do you want to do with your life? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go to school? And how is somebody at that age supposed to know? Unless you're one of the very few that knew when you were born what you wanted to do, most of us have no idea. And I remember specifically dreading having my parents' friends come over because I didn't have an answer. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know where I want to go to school. I don't know how to even make that choice. How do you make a decision when you're that age, what you're going to do for the rest of your life? So since I didn't know, I just kind of live life by default. Don't know. I'm going to go off to college and I'll figure it out when I get there. Well, what school do you want to go to? Well, I don't even know how to pick that. So I went to the school where most of my friends went, which was University of Colorado in Boulder, with a major of undeclared. And that can last for a few years. Just take general courses until they finally say, all right, Gary, like, what are you going to major in here? And I didn't know. So I just picked what I got my best grades in, which was biology. So I became a biology major. And then that'll get you off the hook for a little while. And then you got to figure out, okay, what are you going to do with your biology degree? I don't know. So my dad was a dentist. So I thought, well, I know the lifestyle, I know a lot about it. So let me try dentistry. So off to dental school I go to USC, and I actually enjoyed it. It was very. I had a lot of fun, and got out, became a dentist, and had a great time doing it. As I was improving my skills, building my practice, that was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it for many, many years. But what is it? Was it what I should have done with my life? I don't know. It's just what by default I ended up doing. And a lot of people do that. And once you get into your career, then you start accumulating things, right? Houses, cars, spouses, kids, hopefully one spouse, but maybe spouses. And then you're kind of locked into it. And you got to hang in there for as long as it takes to get your kids through school or get to a better place. And then we figure out what we want to do. Maybe then we say, at age 40 or 50 or even later, this isn't what I should have done. I want to change careers. And then your runway is so much less, so much shorter. So in my case, when I graduated from USC Dental School, the advice that I was given by the gurus of that time was build a great product and people will come. Build a great product and people will come. So maybe many of you have heard that. So go out and do the best job you can, and people will naturally, mysteriously find out about you. So I spent 20 years doing that, reaching the highest levels you could get to in dentistry, studying with the best mentors, building a beautiful practice, buying all the technology, still blending in with everybody else who says, yeah, I'm a dentist too. Yeah, I'm in psychology too. Yeah, I'm a coach too. Yeah, I'm a X too. Even though they didn't do it at the level that I did, it just drove me crazy. And I was so frustrated. I'd never worked so hard at something and not gotten the results that I thought I would. And that's when I went out and hired a coach, hired a guy by the name of John Assaraf. If you've ever seen the movie The Secret, he was in that. And through him, I learned how to use the internet, websites, drip campaigns, SEO. So now I could tell everybody all about me. I could tell the world how wonderful I am. Right? But the only problem was, what am I going to say? What am I going to say that separates me from everybody else who does what I do? Since I didn't know, I just stayed quiet until one day I heard him interview Simon Sinek. And that's when I learned about this concept of why. And Simon developed that golden circle concept, right? Everybody knows what they do. Some know how they do what they do, which means, what are the proprietary processes that you think make you different? But very few know why they do what they do. And by why, we mean what's your purpose, what's your cause, what's your beliefs. And it's the inspiring people like Martin Luther King and Steve Jobs, inspiring companies like Apple, Southwest Airlines, Harley Davidson, that start with why, then tell you how they do what they do. And lastly, what it is they do that connects with you in a completely different way that allows you to make a decision because it feels right. When I heard that, Barrett, I said, man, that's what I'm missing. I have a great what, but I don't know my why. And so I became obsessed with discovering my why. And I called Simon. I said, Simon, I need you to help me discover my why. So he and I spent about 8 months together going back through my life looking for clues. And we can dive into that in a little bit here. And once I figured out my why, that my why is to find a better way and then share it, that's when my life started to make sense to me. Find a better way and share it. I have a lot of patents and products and inventions that are better ways of doing things, and then I share them with the world. And so in my dental practice, we stopped talking about what we do, crowns, bridges, fillings, all that fun stuff. We started talking about why we do what we do and what we believe. And that's when my practice took off. The right people started coming to us, those that believed what we believe. Then, as my practice took off, I started getting calls from other dentists wanting me to help them. So I helped a few hundred dentists. I had to go back and figure out what Simon was trying to do and make it better. So instead of taking 6 or 8 or 10 months, I figured out a process for helping you discover your why in about an hour. And I did this for thousands of people for free: dentists, chiropractors, lawyers, anybody who would let me. And I started to notice patterns and trends and similarities. And I figured out that there's only 9 different whys. And that was the most important thing I discovered, because once I figured that out, I could teach other people to do what I was doing. I could get more data. And then with that data, I was able to develop the algorithm, write the software that now you can go online and do it much, much faster. That we can talk about that later. But so now I've helped many hundreds of thousands of people discover their why so that they can live their why, so they can have passion for what they do and they can have a bigger impact in their life. And that was maybe that wasn't a quick story, but that was the story kind of behind the story of why you might want to listen to me. I've done more why discoveries than anybody in the world. And I can tell you a whole lot about it as we go. I've been obsessed with this for over 14 years, and now it's become my life's work. I no longer have a dental practice. I stepped away from what I was doing to what I feel like I should be doing and was put here to do. And that's why we're bringing this to the world in the way we are. And that's why I'm so glad that I'm here on your show, Barrett. So thanks for having me today.
Well, really grateful that you're here and that you shared your story because, you know, many people, as you said, create their life by default. They really do their best. And I mean, I followed in my father's footsteps to becoming a civil engineer, earlier on in my career. And because I just really didn't know what I wanted to do. And my dad said, how about being a civil engineer? And, I was great in math and science. And I said, sure, why not? Right? And off I went. And the idea here is that you continued to do your best, right? In dentistry, you learn, there was excitement, momentum as you were growing. And at some point, something changed, right? Something shifted. And it's that little voice that is really important for people to listen to, especially when it comes as a little whisper before it gets louder, and then stuff can show up in our life, right? To just kind of really like, I'm not feeling as satisfied maybe, or as excited, or as, like I'm having as much fun as I used to. And just to begin to tune in to some of those feelings, because that is absolutely guiding us to pivot, or at least to ask questions like, what else might there be out there for me? And maybe to seek a coach, maybe to listen to a podcast like this, or, grab a book, or just go into reflection in nature, right? However we do this, to be able to explore. And so I honor you for doing the work to explore and getting the help to get the clarity. And now, this feels aligned for you. So how do people know, like, what are some of the indicators before we get into the whys, like for
Yeah.
people to know that they might be not quite congruent with maybe a deeper or higher calling, a higher why?
The question, that's a great way to put it, Barrett, is like, what's the question that came up? And maybe you experienced this as well, but really it was, is this all there is? I mean, yes, I know I'm having an impact. Yes, I know I'm helping people. Yes, I know, um, because as I mentioned, my dental practice was at a pretty high level, and I did what was called sedation dentistry, where somebody would come in and that was very fearful and kind of let their health go, and in one day we could bring them back to where they were. We'd put them to sleep, and when they woke up, man, they felt like $1,000,000. Everything was done, and so yes, we were having a big impact in their life, and after you've done that many, many, many times, it's still great, but it's, and that nagging question was really, is this what I was meant to do? Is this the impact that I was meant to have? Is this where I'm supposed to be spending my time? Is this all there is? And as I figured out the 9 whys and I started helping more and more people discover their why, my energy went towards that. I was like, wow, look at the impact I can have there. And that became almost like an addiction to, I couldn't wait to help people. So remember, I'm a dentist now. So as you're sitting in my office, when you're not asleep, we're having a conversation. So I had a lot of people to talk to and help discover their why and the impact that I saw it have in their life. When they, if you ask somebody, why do you do what you do? And why don't other people just do things the way you think they should be done? Why do they do it their own way? Why do you have energy for some things and not others? Why are you passionate about some things and not others? Why do you walk into a room and quickly connect with some people and others you don't really connect with? Why do you make the decisions that you make? Why do you behave the way you behave? When they start thinking about those questions, those are not easy questions to answer until you know your why. And then they become very easy to answer. One of the things that I've noticed, Vered, in doing this work for 14 years is that most people just don't know. So they pick somebody else to be like. It's almost like Halloween, right? On Halloween, you put on a costume. So much fun at first. You get to be somebody else. You don't have to be yourself. You can go decide who you want to be. But throughout the night, it gets very tiring. And by the end of the night, you can't wait to get that costume off. And a lot of people live their life that way, right? They're not sure who they are. So they pick someone they want to be because somebody told them they should have these beliefs. And then they use those beliefs to get a little further down the path, but then it still doesn't quite fit. And it leaves them nowhere again. So they hang on to what they thought they should be. Someone told them they should be doing, should be thinking, like you and I went through, until we reach that point where it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
I don't think this is what I should be doing. And maybe you can elaborate on that for your audience as well. What was the thing that made you switch? Because
Mhm.
you made quite a big pivot as well, right?
Mhm. So I think it really is tuning into the emotions. I remember when I was working in engineering, I was working at a company that's called Pratt and Whitney Canada with kind of jet engines and doing some structural uh, certification testing on these engines. And I remember that I had a really great relationship with the assemblers that I worked with and the rig. However, the work itself was not satisfying. And I remember kind of noticing how other people were so excited by it, and I was not. And I thought, like, should I be more excited to do that? It just wasn't fun. What was fun was having certain conversations. I used to do some volunteering and I was involved in different things in the company. So that was fun, but the actual work wasn't. And so, and then there's that guilt part of like, I should stick out longer. I should stay here longer. I should do this. I should do that. And then I gave myself permission. I said, you know what? I'm not happy. I had a wonderful boss who actually just spoke with a couple of days ago, interestingly, who was very supportive of me kind of figuring out what is, and we would have conversations about that. We would go on walks and be like, what is more fulfilling for me? And I decided to pursue an MBA because I wasn't quite sure, but I knew that an MBA would open up more doors and more possibilities. So I was, almost like knowing that this wasn't it, and I didn't quite know what I was moving toward, but I knew that I was moving in the direction of creating more possibilities. So sometimes we may not know exactly what it is, and we can still take some actions to move toward that, to have conversations with people, learn more things, and expose ourselves to more possibilities. Yeah, I appreciate that you asked. I think that there are clues that are being given to us, and we need to pay attention to them. If we don't, it's all of the things that you just talked about, and it's also our health that can be directly impacted. Many people following those shoulds, their own shoulds or other people's shoulds, find themselves, as you said, kind of taking off that costume, being really depleted, and also energetically that can have a real effect on their body, which is unfortunate. So number one for our health, first and foremost, we need to take the time to ask ourselves these questions. So what role does that self-respect, reflection, introspection have in helping us to discover our why?
Yeah, like you said, it's that little voice. In my case, Vered, I was actually here in Arizona for a conference when I used to love to go to conferences in dentistry because I'd learn something new. So again, my why is to find a better way, and going to these conferences. And for all the listeners, by the way, Vered's why is also to find a better way, just like me. So we are always looking for better ways, and then we share them. And so I used to love to go to these conferences because I'd learn the latest, greatest, coolest, newest stuff. And so I was at a event here in Scottsdale called the Seattle Study Club, which is like the highest level. And they were showing all these incredible new things that are possible and doable and what people are doing. And that used to just excite me. Can't wait to learn that. And this time it was exciting for me, but I didn't say, I can't wait to learn that. I said, that is wonderful. And I'm glad they're doing it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go there. And right then I knew that was time for me to start looking outside of dentistry and moving on because, I had at that time, my practice was doing very well. I was only working 3 days a week. I was making a lot of money. So I had 4-day weekends every week. It wasn't about I needed more time off or this. It just wasn't the fit anymore. And so I knew there had to be something better. I didn't know that this is the why is not what I created to do this, but I was getting more and more people asking me to help them. And I found that that's where I wanted to spend my time. And so, what actually happened to me, Vered, was I went to a event in Santa Fe called Zozobra, kind of like a Burning Man thing, but not like 4 days of drugs and whatnot. It's just a one night kind of more festival type thing where they burn this big statue. And so it was a buddy's birthday, and we probably ate and drank a little too much. Woke up with a headache, took a couple Advil, went to bed. Didn't think anything of it. One of the Advil didn't dissolve, and it lodged in my GI tract, and it burnt a hole right where there was an artery. And I started bleeding internally, and I didn't know it. And so I drove all the way back to Albuquerque from Santa Fe. Actually went and worked out, just feeling crummy. And then I started, when I got home, I just started throwing up blood, and blood was kind of coming out everywhere, and ended up going to the ER. They made me wait for 11 hours. By the time they finally admitted me, my blood pressure was 60 over 30, lost half my blood. They put me in a room that wasn't private. So get up to go to the restroom, lock the door behind me, pass out, hit my head on the sink, end up passed out for a long time. Luckily, I woke up, blood everywhere, opened the door, unlocked the door, pushed it open, passed out. Next thing I know, I'm in a bed. They cut all my clothes off. There's people running all over, the 2 pads on me. They had to revive me, off to surgery, tried to get to the bleed. They couldn't. So they did a CAT scan to see if I'd stopped bleeding. When they pumped all the dye into my arm, they blew out my arm and started getting blood clots growing into my lungs. So the doctor comes in and says, Gary, you've got blood clots that are growing into your lungs. If we don't stop those, you're going to die from the blood clots. But if we try to stop them, we can't get to the bleed. So you're going to die from the bleed. And I was like, well, what are we going to do? And he said, I don't know. And luckily my phone rang right then. It was a friend of mine that's a cardiologist at the hospital. And he said, hey, Gary, I see that you're here. I didn't even know you were here. And I don't like what they're going to do. So I'm going to take over. And I was in the ICU for 9 days. A lot of crazy stuff happened to me. Obviously, I survived since I'm here. I had to go to bed one evening with an IV of heparin to stop the blood clots and hope I didn't bleed. And I didn't. So then I could be treated with blood thinners. But it's a pretty crazy experience. I mean, a lot of stuff happens to you when you're in the ICU for 9 days. And when I got out and I finally went back to work, one of my patients who was in his mid 80s took me aside and he said, hey, Gary, you got a second chance on life here. And he said, when you get to be my age and you look back on your life, are you going to be glad that you stayed a dentist? Are you going to wish you'd taken this why thing to the world? I said, I'm going to wish that I'd taken this why thing to the world. He said, well, then you know what you need to do. And so that's when I sold my practice. What does a dentist know about building software, bringing the why to the world, speaking on stages, writing books? Nothing, not a thing. That is not in my wheelhouse. But because it's what I should be doing, I had unlimited energy for it. See, when you know your why, if what you choose to do with your life is in line with your why, you will have passion for what you do. And passion is the fuel that gives you the energy to pursue your dreams. With passion, you stick to it. Without passion, you give up. And so, has it been an easy road for me? No. Have I made a lot of mistakes? Yes. Have I wasted a lot of money? Yes. Has it, it, discovering your why may not make your life easier, may make it harder, but it'll be so much more fulfilling because you'll know it's what you should be doing. You will have passion for it. You will have energy for it. You will love doing it every day. You will do it. I did it for thousands of people for free. It's not about the money, it's about what you should be doing with your life. And so yes, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I stuck to it. And now it's at a completely different level. But if I didn't have passion for what I was doing, I definitely would have given up long, long time ago. And so that's one of the benefits of knowing your why. It will help you find your passion. Let me say it one more time. If what you choose to do with your life is in line with your why, if you get to live your why in what you choose to do, you will love it. So, Vered, if you get to show people, help people find a better way, will you love doing that?
Absolutely.
That's what you do, right?
That's
It's
right.
what I do. I should give them a better way to know who they are so they can find their passion and live the life they were meant to live. And that's what knowing your why does. And I don't know if we want to get to the part about knowing your why is just the first step, but
We do. I want to first kind of just pause and say, first of
yeah.
all, how grateful I am that you made it through that intense event in your life. And that wonderful guy, that 80-year-old, asked you what he asked you. And that's how things show up in our life. Sometimes events show up that we may not welcome as crises, and there are learnings within those crises. We're meant to have those experiences so that we could connect with some energy, connect with some resources, be able to learn things that we can take with us to be able to pursue that which is our higher calling. So if it's all right, let's kind of begin to introduce maybe the 9 whys, and then we can get to other things. Just so I'm sure people by now are like, all right, tell me what they are. I want to begin to tune in to what I resonate with.
Yeah. So your why comes from the limbic part of your brain. And that is the part of the brain that is responsible for feelings like loyalty and trust. Decision making happens at the level of the limbic brain, but it doesn't have the capacity for language. So, what that means is you can't tell someone why you feel a certain way. Why do you love your spouse? Well, I don't know why I love my spouse. I just know that I do, right? It's a feeling. And so to access your why, you have to get to that part of your brain. The only way that I could do it was through stories. So I would have you tell me a story. Here's how I used to do it. And you could still do it this way. So I would say, Vera, tell me a story about an interaction you had with somebody at work that made you feel successful. And then you would tell me a story about somebody that you helped find a better way. They were struggling and you showed them a better way and they had success. And then I'd say, okay, great. Tell me a story about an interaction you had with somebody outside of work that made you feel successful. And the work or outside of work really didn't matter. It was just people could go to a story at work quicker. And then you would tell me almost the exact same story, just with different people in it. And we could see this pattern of what made you feel successful. It was finding a better way and sharing it, showing them a better way. You'd use the words better way, better way, better way. And so I started keeping track of all the whys that I discovered. And I found there's only 9 different whys. And the names of the whys are not names that I came up with. They're names that people would say. So when they heard it, they would say, yeah, that's what I would say, or that's what I said. So here are the 9 whys. So if you have a paper or pencil, or you're typing on your computer, the first why is contribute. Contribute. To contribute to a greater cause, add value, have an impact in the lives of others. These are people that want to help. They don't necessarily have to be the focus, but they want to contribute in a meaningful way. They use their time, their money, their energy, their connections to push other people forward. Oftentimes, they feel like they should be in the background, helping others do better. But when you put them in a leadership role, they do extremely well. The second why is trust. Trust, to create relationships based upon trust, to be the trusted source, to be the one that others can count on. If you can trust them and they can trust you, the sky is the limit. There's nothing you can't do. But if you break their trust, you probably won't ever get it back. These are the people that keep secrets. They're really good at being confident. They usually have a smaller group of friends. That is their trusted circle. The third why is make sense. Make sense. To make sense out of things, especially if complicated or complex. These are people that are great problem solvers. You can pretty much dump all your stuff onto them and they'll quickly synthesize it down to the thing that's keeping you stuck, help you understand it, and then help you move forward. So they help you move forward by helping you solve your problems. And they typically do it very, very fast. They have a very high capacity. The fourth why is better way. That's Vered and my why. These are people that are really good at taking something that's already there and innovating it, improving upon it, making it better. They're rarely satisfied and always looking for ways to make things better. So the fifth why is right way, to do things the right way in order to get results. These are structure, process, systems people. They find things that work and they stick to them. They're oftentimes the no person, meaning we said we're going to do this, and no, we're not going to add anything to it until we complete what we said we were going to do. So they're great to have on your team if you want to create structure and process around predictability. The sixth why is challenge, almost the opposite, to challenge the status quo and think outside the box. These are people that don't follow the rules, don't draw inside the lines, don't do the things the way everybody else does it. They do it their own way. Purple hair, you can sometimes recognize this one pretty easily because they don't follow the rules. They don't want to do it. They want to think different and push the limits. The seventh why is mastery, to seek mastery and understanding. Excuse me. These are people that take the simple and make it complex by diving in really deep. They look for the nuances, the little things that make the big difference. For you and I, it's 3 steps to cook a scrambled egg. For them, it's 28 steps because they know everything about every step. The eighth why is clarify, to make things clear and understandable. The other person that asks a ton of questions, first to get clear on what was the question, and then a lot of questions to make sure they're clear on the answer. They write you the long text and the long email so that they're fully understood. And the last why is simplify, to decrease complexity, make things easier to understand. They want things direct to the point. Don't give me the fluff. Don't beat around the bush. Just hit me with it. They don't want to overcomplicate their life. They want to make things simple, easy to understand. So that's a real quick through the 9 whys. All of us have all 9. One of them is more dominant than the rest. That's the one that becomes your why. But knowing your why is just the first step. Knowing your how and your what is just as important. So the second most popular, most important to you is your how. And the third most important to you is actually your what. Why you do what you do, how you bring your why to life, and what it is others can count on from you. That's your why, your how, and your what. And so those all come from the 9 whys.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And, and I invite, people who are listening to begin to ask themselves those questions, like, reflecting back, let's say, to a time when they were successful or kind of a peak moment and just noticing what shows up. Of course, they can also take your assessment, which we'll talk about at the end. And what advice do you kind of want to offer now to people who are feeling really disconnected from their purpose? Like, what can they I know we kind of touched on this before, but there are a lot of people that are really suffering now. um Maybe they have successful jobs or businesses as you did. They have not yet had the moment of the question being asked, or the thing showing up in their life, right? So they're that in between stage of like, okay, I know that there's got to be something more, right? And I
Yeah.
don't yet know what it is. So they're in the in between. What can they do in that in between?
Well, first of all, if that's you, I want to give you some peace because that's most people. Very few know who they are, what their why is, and why they're doing what they're doing. So I don't want you to stress and say, oh gosh, nobody's like me. This is just because I'm just this, or you could label it however you want to label it. But the truth is, you just maybe weren't taught or you didn't have an opportunity to figure it out. And so there are a lot of great tools out there. There's Myers-Briggs, Colby, Strength Finders, DISC, there's coaches, there's consultants, there's therapists. There's so many ways that you can go. And that in itself can be very overwhelming. And all you really want to know is like, what is my first step? Where do I start? And I believe that knowing your why is that first step. So, one of the analogies that we use is when you don't know your why, imagine yourself driving down a mountain road and you run into this big bank of fog. Think of what happens to you when you're in the fog. You got to slow down, right? You grip the steering wheel a lot tighter,
Mhm.
right? You can't tell where you're going. You can't tell where you've been. You're just trying to stay on the road, stay on the path. You can't enjoy the ride and you can't move very fast. And it's hard to make a decision because I don't really know enough to make a decision. You rely a lot on hope. Man, I hope I don't crash. I hope I stay on the road. And contrast that with when you get through that bank of fog and you get into the clear. And man, you can see where you're going. You can see where you've been. You can move so much faster. You can enjoy the ride. You can see all the great things around you when things are clear. So, knowing your why gives you the clarity to move forward faster in the right direction with speed and purpose and passion and energy. So,
Absolutely. And I think it's so important for people to kind of pause and go inward. As you said, there are many tools out there, there are many questions. Yours obviously is a fantastic tool. And we want to just kind of pause and go inward. That guidance can come to us in the form of an assessment, it can come in many forms. And just giving ourselves some quiet time to just go inward, notice how we're feeling, and to ask the question. Oftentimes we'll open up the doors, right? Like, a book, an assessment, as something will show up in our life, um, for us to get that next little step, the next little pebble, if you will, or a little breadcrumb on our path. And so you mentioned earlier that Simon Sinek gave you some clues during those 8 months or however long it was that you worked together. I am so curious. What are those clues?
yeah, it's funny. I recorded my calls with Simon, and it's interesting to listen to him. And then once I figured out the 9 whys, I went back and showed him all, kind of the way that a better way, and recorded those calls as well. But so here's what we did. Just like what we did is we went, and this is what any of you can do. You could work with a friend, um, you could work with a coach, but we went backwards from current day in my life to every significant event that I could remember. And why did that what about it made me feel successful? And so we went back all the way to when I was like 5 years old. And I remembered when I found a better way to clean the yard or do the work around the house, how much praise I got from my dad. And you can go all the way back to that. But here's what was interesting, what I figured out that made the whole process easier. So we went back through many, many, many different events. But since it's a pattern that repeats itself over and over, why would I have to go back to when I'm 5 years old to try to remember it? I could just pick two things that happened last week or three things from yesterday. I don't have to go all the way back there because you'll see the pattern very quickly. And the better you get, the better I did it so many times that I became very good at picking out the pattern because I'd heard the same stories over and over and over. And that comes with doing reps. But so maybe it may take you 4 or 5 or 6 stories that you tell a friend for them to start to notice the pattern. So what you could do is have them tell them their first story and just have them write down what they think they heard. Okay, tell them another story, have them write down what they think they heard, and just keep going until all of a sudden it becomes very clear what your why is, why you do what you do, why you feel successful in those stories, why that had an impact on you. And you can look for that pattern and find out your why. And then I gave you the list of all the 9 whys, so you can see if one of those, which one of those shows up. And you can also use that to find your how and your what, because once you know your why, then okay, well, how do you bring that to life? What's the process you use? So let me go back to the why, how, and what.
Please.
Your why is your motivation. Why you do what you do. What's your motivation? Your how you bring your why to life is your process, the process that you use. And then your what is ultimately what you bring, and that's the deliverable. So it's motivation, process, deliverable. So once you know your motivation, you can look at the 9 whys and say, okay, which of these is the process that I use to bring my why to life? And then ultimately, one of them is going to be what you deliver. So in my case, my why, like Vered, is to find a better way and share it. I mean, we can't turn it off. Go to bed thinking about a better way, wake up thinking about a better way, and we can't turn it off. And then how we bring that to life for me is creating clarity, making things clear and understandable. And in your case, it's simplifying things, right? Making things simple, easy to understand, decreasing complexity. And then our what, ultimately, what do I bring? I bring a simple solution. Make things simple, easy to understand. And what you bring is a way to contribute, add value, have an impact in people's lives. So one of the 9 whys is your why, one of the 9 whys is your how, and one of the 9 whys is your what. And so if you have somebody that knows you well and is willing to listen to that many stories, you could do that with them as well. And here's another quick story on what it's like to live your why. So I went out and hired a tech firm originally, and I wanted them to help me build a platform that would allow people to discover their why. See, because if there was a time, Vered, when I had done so many why discoveries that I thought, well, the only way to do it is if I do it, because I'm the expert and I've done all the work and I've put in the 10,000 hours. And so they have to come to me for this. Well, I wasn't correct. And if that was true, then how many people could I actually impact in my entire life? If it took me an hour or even 20 minutes, and I could only do, let's say, 6 a day, how many people in my entire lifetime could I impact? And that's when I had to figure out that's when I figured out there has to be a process for this that doesn't involve me. And so once I did that, I got a tech firm to help me do it. And every time I needed a change, it's another $5,000, another $10,000, another $5,000. And one weekend I got so upset that I said, you know what, F this. If they can figure out how to do this, I can figure out how to do it. So I created the algorithm, learned how to program the software, and program the software in 1 weekend. 1 weekend. And it worked incredibly well. And so, any of you, when you're living in a line with your why, there's almost nothing you can't do. And so, and so my software, it's called the WHY.os Discovery. I've done more why discoveries than anybody in the world, and I was only about 70% accurate. So 30% of the time, I didn't get it right. I didn't even get my wife's correct. And so that's when the software, I developed a software that's 100% accurate, gets it every time. So you can go to whyinstitute.com and discover your why, or you could discover your WHY.os. And so the point isn't that you go use the WHY.os discovery. There's other ways you can do this. If you are working with a coach or a counselor, you can do it with them. If you're reading Simon Sinek's book, you can dive deeper into that. The WHY.os discovery is a way to do it that will do it very quickly and very accurately for you, but it's not the only way.
Yeah.
So the point is, make a decision to figure out who you are, and then the rest becomes even easier. So, Barrett, thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh, such a joy. I truly believe that when we begin to ask the questions from a really curious place, that the universe will bring opportunities for us to learn what that is. And thank you. Thank you for giving from your heart today for all of us, and for listening to your own heart along your life's journey. Hey, game changers. I hope you loved this episode with Dr. Gary Sanchez to really know your why. And in case you're curious to tune into other episodes on this topic, there are a whole bunch. One of them is episode 88, which is with Rabbi Alush, about how to find meaning and purpose in your life. I think you're going to get some great nuggets. You'll hear some amazing stories, just like Gary shared with us. And I think you're going to love it. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, share this episode if you found it helpful, and all my love.